M41A1 Walker Bulldog is a USA light tank that I really enjoyed. It's quite difficult to play, requires concentration and some game knowledge, but in return the tank provides a lot of memorable moments and pleasant adrenaline rush during intense fights that are not so common when playing other vehicles. In this video you will see a lot of one-shots, but I want to warn you that this does not represent what happens most of the time. I often had to reload the cannon 2, 3 or even 4 times before the opponent was finally destroyed. But if the whole video was made of clips where I'm just aiming at the same target and reloading the cannon over and over again, it would be quite boring. I will still try to share my experiences with this tank as well as I can, but keep in mind that one-shots do not happen that often. All rounds this tank uses have quite poor post-penetration damage, so usually it takes more than one hit to destroy an enemy. Because of that, if opponents still had the driver and engine intact after my hit, they were able to escape quite often, leaving me with a heavy feeling of unfinished business. Or alternatively, someone else would finish the opponent sooner, which on one hand is annoying because I didn't get a full reward, but at the same time useful when doing daily tasks that require getting assists. This is definitely one of the best tanks if you are trying to not kill the enemy as long as possible. The most damaging tanks round is high explosive, but it has less than a kilogram of explosives. It's so weak that only very squishy targets can be damaged. So squishy that most of the time I was able to deal with them with machine guns before I even had a chance to reload the cannon anyway. The most damaging round for armored opponents is the default one, solid armor piercing round. It's not special in any way and has somewhat similar penetration as most of the vehicles of the same battle rating that use APHE ammunition. Just instead of exploding inside, this round creates spalling, and that's it. It's not even as heavy as other tanks rounds because Walker Bulldog has smaller than average caliber cannon. And there are two sub-caliber rounds. One of them is APCR, that has very good muzzle velocity but way less mass, so less post-penetration damage, and slightly more penetration than the default AP round. And my favorite that I was using almost all the time, APDS, that also has good muzzle velocity, also deals less damage than full caliber round, but unlike APCR, this one has significantly more penetration, up to 300 mm at close range, making it possible to penetrate almost all tanks anywhere, except thick and angled frontal plates of few heaviest tanks, mostly when up-tiered. Despite none of the rounds dealing good damage, this downside is slightly offset by the ability to fire more rounds in a short amount of time. The cannon reloads from 7.7 to 5.9 seconds depending on crew skills. That is way faster than most of the opponents, and most importantly, even with untrained crew, the reload of this tank is faster than it takes to replace a crew member with aced crew, meaning that if you were able to knock out an opponent's gunner, you will always be able to shoot another round before the opponent has a chance to shoot back. Unless the opponent's commander can fire the main armament as well, but such feature is mostly found on higher tier vehicles that Walker Bulldog does not have to play against. Just like most light tanks, M41A1's strong side is ability to position itself in advantageous position, such as being the first one to capture a point that is easy to defend at the beginning of a match, or quickly getting behind the enemy team and attacking them where they don't expect to be attacked. It is possible thanks to high maximum speed of 72 km/h, which is possible to reach even off-road, but it requires moving straight and not making turns for a very long time. acceleration of this tank, despite being quite good, is not good enough for reaching such high maximum speed limit before running into enemy respawn. But when there was a hill on my way that allowed me to accelerate faster, the tank was able to maintain high speed quite well. By the way, how do you call a walker Bulldog when it reaches its maximum speed? Runner Bulldog. And at minimum speed? Sitting Bulldog. And a Bulldog that is not ugly? Cat. M41A1 has a good reverse of 19 kph. It's the main defensive feature of this vehicle, since it allowed me to quickly disappear if I attracted too much attention. Technically, the smoke shell could also count as defensive feature, but when enemies were coming to my position ready to fight me face to face, the last thing I wanted to do is to not be able to use my cannon because I was loading a smoke round. If I saw that someone is coming for me, I wasn't wasting time to turn around and use the reverse to get as far away as possible. This vehicle is good at flanking or engaging while enemies are busy shooting someone else, but if someone was going to engage me directly, a walker Bulldog is always a disadvantage. The thickest armor plates it has is only 32mm, which is thick enough to activate APA Chief users, but at the same time thin enough to be easily penetrated even by SPAs. It's safe to assume that any incoming shot from any vehicle will easily penetrate this tank. Walker Bulldog does not forgive mistakes. Technically, if the commander survives, he can fire the main cannon, but this feature was almost never useful. There are only 4 crew members, so most of the time the first hit sent me to hangar immediately. It's less important but still worth mentioning that Walker Bulldog, just like most light tanks, rotates the turret slightly faster than medium or heavy tanks. Not significantly, but it still makes it a bit easier to be behind enemy lines where you can be attacked from any direction. Also, it has gun depression of 10 degrees, which is great when playing hull down, but completely normal for majority of the tanks. And it has a scouting ability, which is handy for people like me who like to fly planes in ground realistic battles, and also makes me feel useful even if I didn't make any kills or capture points. Just like most light tanks, this vehicle feels worse in arcade, especially when all its shell types deal poor post-penetration damage, which is especially bad in a game mode where tanks can survive with just one crew member. There was no way to use speed advantage in my favor. It's hard to flank when the name tag tells opponents where you are anyways. And planes were attacking me all the time, which is not necessarily bad considering that there is a high caliber machine gun on top. It's nice to get an occasional kill just because someone decided to crash into me. The Walker Bulldog has slightly lower battle rating in arcade, 6.0, but that's not very helpful since sub-caliber rounds have already enough penetration to penetrate most tanks anyway. The main tank's problem is post-penetration damage, which is not affected by playing against lower BR tanks. Playing Walker Bulldog was very fun. It's always exciting to create chaos between enemy lines, though it might not be as simple to play as regular tanks because it requires good knowledge of maps, awareness, and having a backup plan. Often this tank ends up alone on enemy territory when no one can cover its back. I would rate M41A1 Walker Bulldog 7 shovels to dig graves for opponent's team out of 10. It is a difficult vehicle, but it can show very good results in battle under the right circumstances.